Hello and welcome back to Raised Gaming and a quick overview of your best builds for Season 12 in Diablo 4. It's indeed a short season this time around since, it launches on March 10th and then we have the expansion in less than 2 months after that. So we'll have less time to mess around in the season compared to normal as a warning. With that in mind, based on the PTR performance and the little changes in Season 12 itself, what looks like the best overall build for each class, a lot of them have a straight answer. You get a couple options with actually a few of them, so let's get into it. First up then, we have the extremely strong and popular Paladin, which comes as no shock as it is the newer class, right? And back in Season 11, you had the Paladin with the ridiculous, no downsized, bested everything, and its top clear currently is a 144 in Season 11 compared to 132 or 130 of the next two classes. It was so far ahead, and it's still going to be a top contender, if not the top contender of Season 12, just maybe not so comically, massively ahead as it was. We're looking at around Pits 120 in the PTR here, as you can see. And as you're going to hear in this video, other classes are just behind that. So yeah, top class for sure, but maybe more reasonable. Anyway, the top build right now we're looking at is around the Blessed Shield as a core. So you're throwing your shield to bounce around the targets like your Captain America, but also you're going to be extremely tanky. You'll have your Arbiter of Justice, and you'll be pumping DPS and reflecting all the damage that's thrown at you back at the attackers via thorns and stacking that for various reasons. You've got the unique Ward of the White Dove, that's the shield, which increases the damage of Blessed Shield itself, and it makes it cheaper to actually use, so a key source to actually keep throwing it. Interestingly, you'll be able to mod the skill so it becomes a Juggernaut skill via Shield of Retribution, but importantly that causes your Thorns damage to pulse from the shield before bursting, doubling up on the benefits of Thorns. One of the bonuses of your shield being a Juggernaut skill then, besides another source of damage multiplication, is the unique Mantle of the Grey. It makes Juggernaut skills, aka your shield now, 25% larger, making it easier to land, as well as increasing its damage. But that unique itself comes with a pile of Thorns and Thorn skill levels, so it's a very obvious and intended synergy. So yeah, all of that combined with your other stuff, your high block chance, the Defiance aura for unstoppable, a massive burst of armor and resistances, or your Fanaticism aura for attack speed, crit strike chance that stacks up. It's just extremely strong, and thankfully this playstyle, this build, is really fun and unique. So I have no doubt that it's going to be extremely popular in Season 12. Moving on to one of the other top builds of the season then, it's Druid with a straightforward, familiar, single answer. Pulverize. There's good reason to think that it can clear a Pit 120 or higher, but it had a 118 Pit clear in the PTR, so it definitely is poised to be one of the top, at very least, competing classes. Anyway, it's classic werebear back at it again, with the built-in tankiness and ridiculous AoE potential of Pulverize. The damage is scaled through a variety of ways, but the classic is poison and overpower, thanks to, rotting Lightbringer again. This causes your Pulverize to generate poison puddles, it guarantees that overpower, and so those are two damage buckets you sort of hyper engage in. Further Pulverizes also trigger the nearby puddles to splash, increasing their size, so you spam Pulverize, you get more puddles, they do more AoE, they get bigger, so on and so on. Other familiar multipliers will be added, Rabid Beast for more poison damage, CDR management through Ursine Horror, you'll stay alive through the bear form itself but fortify as a prime source, and like many builds, you'll dump your resources into the Quack's Rune for further increased output. It is just tried and tested Pulverize, and its performance in the PTR was insane. We're hoping for a lot to shake up in Season 13 in the expansion, but for Druid and right now, it's a return to Pulverize. Moving on to Spiritborn then, two options spring forward, both are familiar but at least you've got a couple options. It really depends on your goal. The general overall best Spiritborn option is probably Rake, with its ability to deal with everything at this really high pace and just kind of massively AoE clear super fast. Obviously it's not a new concept, the raw size of the rakes you build are fun, the Jaguar dropping in for its own rakes, you get a bunch every time you press it and they're huge, thanks to again the Kepaleka staff. It helps you increase the size of your attacks, making them guaranteed crits, and based on your resource building and spending, all the more stronger. So obviously you'll min-max your resource building and spending, building that damage as much as possible through things like crit damage and other familiar sources. It's a great build to kind of crush everything hyper quick, and will be great in the open world, general clearing, progressing, getting builds online. But it's probably not actually your top choice for pushing pits and things like leaderboards to challenge content, because that's where you want to consider the payback build, all to do with the payback skill. So that deals damage in front of you, like Rake, but recovers its own cooldown when you're attacked. With Poised Payback, you also consume your Vigor to increase its damage, so another reason to stack resource generation as much as possible and encourage that part of the output. And obviously, it's also using Kepeleke, like every damn build, scaling its size, guaranteeing the crits, dealing more crit damage based on their resources. It's just so much in one item. So yes, resource stacking further encouraged. Their unique Midnight Sun helps you actually fulfill the resource demand that is insane here, maintaining the never-ending attacks. So you'll find the highest output potential with this other familiar build, but it'll be a lot slower compared to Rake in terms of clear and mobility speed. If you're looking to crush everything with high speed, I would still recommend Rake. But obviously if you're looking to push content, you're going to want the most output potential, and that's where it looks to be Payback again. For Necromancer then, you have two fantastic options, both of which will work in all content, which is awesome to say, though it is hard to say which is going to come out on top, because in the PTR, it was actually very close. If you want to look at straight numbers, the Golem build did come out on top, the one that's tied to the unique Grave Bloom that gives you the 3 golems instead of 1, which is a really fun concept and one I really enjoyed engaging with when they added that. Heavily investing in Golem, you're summoning damage, it's something straightforward about just a minion based build, where in the past for a long time, a quote unquote minion build was basically just a shadow build with a few skeletons. So if you haven't tried it, I do strongly recommend it. But of course, the other top contender is exactly that familiar build around Shadow Blight yet again. So you just trigger that key passive as much as possible by stacking up as many sources of that shadow damage, darkness skills, and dealing this burst by the triggering of the actual key passive. That's done through things like Soul Rift uptime, the shadow pools you spread everywhere from Corpse Explosion and Blight, backed up through various other sources. It's the dot build that bursts with the Shadow Blight triggers. Both are going to be actually great for progression, should be great for single target, and clearly pick clears. The Golem build was actually the top clearer at a 115 in the PTR, compared to just behind that a 113 for the Shadow Blight build. So to say the least, it's extremely close, and we're talking in the context of early PTR testing and unfinished setups. That's why I think it could go either way. I consider that a pretty solid win for the class, in that you're going to have two builds that look very competitive and, you know, strong compared to other classes, as well as for those pick clears. But at the same time, neither of these builds are that fresh or brand new, so take that as you will. Next then, we have another split between two builds for Barbarian, but you might have like a personal choice for this one. Both are performing very well in high-end pits, right? But with a lot of overlap in how you scale the damage and how you play it, but that's Barbarian. Earthquake is a prime example of a damage source that's been a prime damage source and multiplier for Barbarian for a long time. Generate Earthquakes, stand in them, pop them, get a load of damage mods through Earthquakes. Mountain's Fury unique is allowing you to pop those Earthquakes that you generate via stomping, which you're also trying to stand in. You build Fury like crazy and spend it like crazy, with, say, the Steps unique actually auto-casting those stomps for you. Piling all these damage multipliers into powerhouse hits then, and what's that going to be? Well, Hammer of the Ancients, making you, of course, a boss killer monster. Or, instead, you could think about Lunging Strike, which is appealing thanks to the built-in mobility and fast clear potential because of that. This is also played around maintaining high fury, proccing Hooves of the Mountain God, so that Lunge is not just single target, but cleaving, opening up that AoE potential. Honestly, I think this build is more appealing to me for the speed and clear potential, which is where you're going to spend a lot of your time, even in pits. But the Hammer of Ancients being a single target machine and has plenty of AoE potential and could be the better option for pushing, there's plenty of reason for that to win out in that late game content. So it depends on your focus. Alright, quick one next is Sorcerer, who seems to be in a very solid position, even if it's also a familiar one. The top pick clears were a 113 with a 115 easily on the table for the classic Crackling Energy build with your Ball Lightnings. So spamming Ball Lightning in every direction, super familiar stuff. It remains extremely effective as a source of single target and AoE, as you can spread this out everywhere in a moment. And then obviously the movement of Sorcerer keeps you ultra fast, super quick clearer, leveling everything. The Crackling Energy part is tied to your uniques, Galvanic Ring, the Esidora's Amulet. You just generate more Crackling Energy, you scale your damage, plus you get benefits of like little pull-ins to help group the enemies up. The build does have some interesting changes to consider this time, where people are talking about dropping Air of Perdition for instead Verglass. Combined with Tibalt's Will, you get this major damage increase by weaving ice shards between the ball lightnings. That's not something you have to think about for AoE clear because they spread out per cast, stacking that up instantly. But there is some minor effort in managing that in single target to get that going for the damage buff first. But it is just going to be a lot of ball lightnings otherwise. With that, you need to manage your crit chance because obviously you're not getting Air of Perdition, which gives you a ton. So endgame wise, there will be some slight changes in how you manage that and achieve that. But ultimately, the ball lightning concept with this current crackling energy focused form is super familiar. But thankfully it is fast and fun, especially if you're trying something like Sorcerer fresh, which should be strong as hell this season. Finally though, that brings us to Rogue, which is in a bit of a strange spot compared to everyone else. As a class, it felt pretty unrepresented in the PTR runs for general testing, and maybe for good reason. With pit clears around a 108, that's noticeably behind in terms of the higher potential. People generally gravitate to the strongest options, and if one class is clearly behind, it becomes less popular that season. And so, that 108 potential was tied to another familiar Rogue build, Death Trap. Simply putting out death traps, spamming them, you pull in the enemies, you dash through them, you death trap again, you pull in the enemies. Since you're able to easily group all the enemies up and leave them behind you, you can set up for whatever you want to follow up with, obviously dashing through them all and avoiding their damage by spacing them out via the dash. We enhanced that by adding the core skill tag to death trap, letting you scale the damage through traps, ultimates and core skills of course. And you want to make sure to manage your CDR so you're always able to drop the next trap and continue. And don't get me wrong, it's a fun and effective build, but Death Trap around familiar stuff like twisting blades from the original launch of the game, it's been played to death, and based on the PTR, noticeably behind the top potential of other builds. There's plenty of talk about Heartseeker as an option, or with Endaril being buffed, that being back, so hopefully Rogue surprises us in Season 12 for output and potential. But yeah, there you have it. That's my quick overview of the classes and their top builds and their options and what you might consider. Have fun with this shorter season because in Season 13, the expansion's meant to really shake things up, which is what we need. Thanks for watching then, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.